Rhythm and rhyme. What makes poetry poetry? First, I want to take a look at a few lines of verse. This is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. So here's the question. Is this poetry? I mean, this kind of looks like this note here. Sorry I took your Gatorade, I was thirsty and weak. Can little scraps of paper you leave on the counter for people be considered poetry? Really, that depends on you, and that's up to you. This poem right here is by William Carlos Williams, and it's a specific type of poetry. When we're looking at poetry, really we look at two basic categories of things. We look at rhythm and rhyme when we just traditionally think about poetry. But we have some poems that don't have one or the other, or don't have either. So the first we need to know is free verse. Free verse is a poem written without any meter or rhythm or rhyme. Meter is just another word for rhythm. So free verse, like that poem, this is just to say, means it has no rhythm and no rhyme at all. It is completely free of any constraints by rhythm and rhyme. And then we also have another one which you might often get confused with free verse, but try to remember the difference. Blank verse. Now blank verse has no rhyme, just like free verse, but it does have a very specific meter, which is iambic pentameter. So remember, free verse, just like the poem we just read, has no meter and no rhyme, and blank verse has meter, iambic pentameter, but no rhyme. Now, blank verse is often used by Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays, Romeo and Juliet, Othello, any other Shakespeare plays you read, are going to have blank verse in them, which means they're going to be written in iambic pentameter, but they're not going to have any rhyme. So what is iambic pentameter? That's what we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about. So remember free verse and blank verse, but we're going to have to get into specifics about iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter. First thing you need to know, like I've already said, meter just means rhythm. So we have the word meter here, so you know iambic pentameter is talking about the rhythm, the meter of a poem. You need to know the term foot. So this is not the foot that is on the end of your leg. A foot is a group of syllables used in poetry. It's just a grouping of syllables. And you can remember syllables aren't just words, they are parts of words. So if we break group of syllables used in poetry down into its syllables, you have group of syllables used in poetry. So you see the word syllables and poetry both have multiple syllables in them. So a foot could be, if it's a group of two syllables, group of would be a foot, Scylla would be a foot. You'll see that more closely in a second. So next is an iamb. So we've already got some parts of iambic pentameter. We have meter, which is rhythm for pentameter, and now iamb for iambic. An iamb is a foot that consists of an unstressed and a stressed syllable. So remember, a foot is just a group of syllables. So an iamb is a group of syllables where one is unstressed and the other is stressed. Now the symbols we use to mark if a syllable is stressed or unstressed are these. That's unstressed, so poorly drawn, unstressed, and that is stressed. So I had a student once named Stefan. So Stefan's name starts with an unstressed syllable and then stressed. When you have an unstressed syllable, it is kind of softer and less pronounced. And then a stressed syllable is going to be louder and more emphasized. So Stefan is unstressed, stressed, Stefan. Now, if we did the opposite of this, and we tried to do Stefan's name stressed and then unstressed, it would sound differently. This one is Stefan, that one is Stefan. So that would be a very different name, Stefan versus Stefan, or Stefan, something like that. The stress in words is actually very important because it changes the way you say them, just like this one, Stefan versus Stefan. Now, here is my representation of a foot, and specifically an iamb. So, remember, a foot's a group of syllables, and iamb is unstressed, stressed. So we have an unstressed and a stressed. So this foot is one iamb, a group of an unstressed and a stressed syllable. Now for iambic pentameter, we need to look at this prefix, penta. Penta means 5. So for iambic pentameter, we have 5 feet of iambs. 5 iambs. And when we have 5 feet, all unstressed, stressed, then we have a line of iambic pentameter. That basically means a line of poetry with 5 iambs in it, iambic pentameter. So let's look at an example. I wish that I could have some cake right now. That's an example of iambic pentameter. We see the first one is unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, and so on. If I read it emphasizing the stresses, it would be, I wish that I could have some cake right now. Same with this next one. I mean, that would be awesome for my health. So you see that these two lines are written in iambic pentameter. There are 5 groups of syllables that are unstressed, stressed. Now, why would people write in iambic pentameter? Iambic pentameter is used very commonly because it is a very common way to speak. You see that these sentences are pretty normal. I wish that I could have some cake right now. People actually normally talk sometimes in iambic pentameter without even knowing it. Also, iambic pentameter kind of sounds like the beat of a heart. So if I read this line again, you can kind of hear the beat of my arteries clogging up. I wish that I could have some cake right now. Or it sometimes sounds like a horse galloping around. So sometimes authors use iambic pentameter just to sound poetic, but like regular speech. Sometimes they use it to mimic this heartbeat sound or this horse sound. But it's used a lot, and you just need to remember that an iamb is unstressed, stressed, and pentameter means there's 5 per line. So what that's going to look like if you have to write iambic pentameter is actually pretty easy. Most of the time you can get away with it by just making sure that you have 10 syllables per line. That would be 5 unstressed and 5 stressed. Unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, on and on and on. Alright, so remember that in poetry, rhythm and rhyme are important, but not necessary. Remember, free verse has neither rhythm nor rhyme. Blank verse has no rhyme, but it has meter, specifically iambic pentameter. And we will be looking closely at iambic pentameter later, so make sure that you know all those terms that have to do with iambic pentameter.